Under items considered timely and important, before I ask you all here if you have anything you'd like to bring forward, it has been such a topic of conversation along the sidewalks and roadways and in homes and neighborhoods in the last several months, particularly ratcheting up here after the holiday season, as to what may or may not become of the vacant space at one of our shopping centers that formerly was home to Farmers Food. I've not in my career up here heard as much comment from all walks of Edenton relative to the inconvenience of not being able to shop at but one grocery store. It is paramount on the minds of most people, like a subject that I can't recall having heard about. So with that in mind, I asked Anne Marie, and she in turn asked Frank McGlory from the Edenton Chowan Partnership, who is the executive director of that organization, to share with us here tonight briefly, but in a precise enough way so that our citizens know what the town has put forward in a way of an effort to bring some competitive operators of grocery stores into our marketplace. It has been extremely active. It's as a member of the Edenton Chowan Partnership Board, I can assure you that that organization has put forward instructions to deal directly with Food Line in one instance, and also to the extent that it could with the owner of the shopping center with the vacant space. So without saying anything further, I'll ask Frank, if you would please, to come forward, and Anne Marie is going to assist, and we'll be brief on the activity that's taking place relative to this public concern.
Mayor, I'm going to start off and then Frank will finish up. We all know, the mayor and the council, the county commissioners, we all know how frustrating it is for the public not having a choice to buy groceries. And we have tried to communicate all along that there is strong interest. We know for a fact that there was strong interest from other grocers to come in here. And we know that groceries are a profitable business. When you think about it, it's probably one of the few commodities that every single person purchases. And to not have a choice is very, very frustrating. And I've heard horror stories of moms not being able to buy the type of cereal that their children can eat that doesn't have sugar and they're not allergic to. And I mean, I've heard it, you've heard it, we've all heard it. And we have been, Frank and myself and others have been in constant contact with the owners of both shopping centers, the Farmers Food Shopping Center, Chowan Crossing. We've been in constant contact with him, and he basically shut down and went into the confidentiality mode several months ago, and he has stuck to his guns and is not talking. We've also, Frank McGlory and Kevin Howard, the county manager, and I have been in touch with the owner of the Edenton Village Shopping Center. They had a representative here several months ago, and in fact they're going to be here. One of the representatives is meeting with us tomorrow afternoon. We have reason to believe, we have not seen anything official, but we believe that Food Line is going to relocate to the Farmers Food space. And we have heard a lot of rumors and scuttlebutts, and hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to verify that Food Line will continue to keep their lease at the vacant, what will become the vacant store at the Edenton Village Shopping Center. And our research has found that they have done that in other communities. The mayor and I found a community up in the western part of the state where Food Line effectively boxed out their competition for 10 years. They paid rent on a vacant store to keep their competition out for 10 years. And a very nice woman from Rocky Hawk called me on Monday to tell me how frustrated she was with some things that happened at Food Lion, and she reminded me that Food Lion did it to Belo 15 miles up the road in Hertford. When Belo went out of business, Food Lion paid rent on that vacant space for a number of years. So it proves how profitable the grocery business is and also how competitive it is. We will continue, once we know for sure who's going where and what vacant stores may be remained vacant and paying rent, and we'll pursue, we'll look at, we'll ask the property owner, can we look at your lease agreement? Because supposedly Edenton Village, in their lease agreement with Food Lion, they're prohibited from renting space on the center, on the property, to another grocery store. So people say, well, why can't you put a grocery store down at the other end where there's vacancy? Well, their lease agreement with Food Lion supposedly does not allow that, but maybe we can have a look and have someone look at that and see if there isn't some wiggle room there. So we'll look at every strategy, every option. We will work on a strategy. We are developing a strategy, and we'll call on citizens. We'll need their help with social media to put pressure on Food Lion not to do that, not only because we need competition, but also we don't want that shopping center is so vulnerable right now, and that will just put that shopping center in peril if there is 36,000 square feet of vacant, empty space.
It's already in peril.
You're absolutely right. It'll be even in more peril.
You're tired.
You're right. We are meeting tomorrow. We expect an announcement anytime soon, and as soon as we hear that, we will certainly communicate it with everybody. We know that there's a market for more grocery competition here, and Frank is going to talk a little bit about the research and what we have found and why we know that to be a fact, and hopefully when the dust settles, we'll be able to look at options for other sites for a grocery. Thank you, Frank.
Got one frame only tonight to show you because I think it really focuses in on the issue that we were just talking about. I think when you look at this problem, we can look at it from 2 points of view. What are we going to do in the present, and realize what we have control over and what we don't have control over. I think sometimes people on the street don't understand exactly what we can and what we cannot do. So I think we have to address what's in the present, but I would see us investing more energy in working our way through this and looking at future opportunities. And I think this data really gives us a sense of it. When you look at this map of the region in which we live, the green line lets you know what we're talking about in terms of the 5-minute commute. The red line lets you know what is classified down here as the 10-minute commute. And the blue line that surrounds the locus of control, which would be in Edenton, is the 15-minute drive. All right, now you and I know, given where we live, and this is a rural state, that basically, even when you go beyond the 15-mile drive, there's plenty of market territory out there that we could draw from. And in fact, I think if you look at Edenton historically, it does tend to draw people into its center. It is the municipal seat. There are a number of dynamics that drive that. So I think in looking at this, you can see within the 5-minute commute, what we actually have as far as grocery store capacity is what is referred to as a surplus. And in this case, it's computed out as $1 million+ in surplus capacity, or 12.7%. But look what happens in a very minor move to that issue of surplus or leakage. You get into the 10-minute commute zone to the grocery store point of control, and suddenly the leakage goes up $2+ million. We're looking at 14.2% leakage. That leakage concept for those not familiar with that language, means that that's business that we are not keeping in Edenton or the county. That's business that's going out of the county to be met, to have those needs met. Now look at the 15-minute commute. We're pushing in on 31% leakage, which gives you a sense of how significant, first of all, the grocery business is, and how much we're losing at the present time. Now this is current data based on, I think this most current study was done in May 2014. It's based on data that was generated through Dun & Bradstreet and published by Electric Cities. So this is about as concrete as we can get in terms of that market analysis.
And this is only for groceries?
This is only grocery stores. When you look at other areas of retail, there's leakage, and we can document all of that. So basically, what I look at, when I see this leakage, I see it's a missed opportunity. Now, we're in a present kind of dynamic where one player, we've got one player in town that's providing groceries, and we're talking about various scenarios that could emerge. And it's sad to say, I'd like to get in front of you and say we've got empirical evidence that says X, Y, and Z, but this is one of those cases, as Anne-Marie reinforced, that we have been working since day one, before farmers left. We're that concerned about it, that we have been working to try to attract another grocery store to the area. And in that context, we discovered these different stories on the street. We were shut out in terms of any meaningful information. We were aggressive in terms of actually conversing with owners of other grocery store franchises out there, actually talking about the benefits of being in the area. It wasn't like we had to convince them. I think it's one of those enterprises where as soon as they look at this data, they see there is a segment of the market that not only could they attract, but they could compete for more business and could attract outside of this 15-minute commute zone that we talk about on this site map. So what we see in this data is there's ample need to be addressed that could easily support a second store. We don't know what's going to happen with the property. I would tell you in one of our conversations with the owner of the plaza where Food Lion is right now, there wasn't much concern on their part if Food Lion left that site because they felt they could easily attract another grocery store. But I think given the details of the agreement, the present agreement with Food Lion, if Food Lion continues under that contract, and I think the contract was through a certain date in 2015, but they have an option to renew it.
They have a couple renewals.
A couple of automatic renewals that are built into it, that basically, if that contract stands, the owner of that particular site believes that they cannot bring another store in to compete, even though that would be an empty storefront. So if the scenario plays out in the most negative way, where that storefront is going to be monopolized and remain dark, and they move over to the farmer's site now, then I think we would be in a position, and this is just my point of view, this is nothing that we developed as a specific strategy within the partnership, but I would tell you, just looking at this data, we've got a case that can be made to an entrepreneur, to a land developer regarding the erection of a site that could host another grocery store. And I don't know what land exists in the immediate area that could accommodate those needs, but it is something that we can pursue as opposed to just sitting here once we find out that both sites may be monopolized by one player in the market. So I don't know if any of you have any specific questions you want to ask. I don't know that I can answer them because we're dealing with what I call soft data, since so much of it is based on what we've gathered off the street or inferring from limited information that has been shared with us.
Frank, I don't have a question, but I've got a comment. If that data was put together in April of 2014, can you imagine what the leakage is now?
May of 14.
May of 14.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I can imagine in this way that even though if you look at the size of our area, people might argue, well, one store can adequately take care of our needs. I think there's enough anger in the community as to what's happening there's a level of frustration on the part of even the employees in the present store, because when you go into that store, there's enough constant activity that I think people aren't prepared to stay up with the demand. People have complained to us about going in and finding empty shelves, no milk on the shelves, no meat product in certain categories. They run out of sales items. So it just goes on and on and on. And whether it's totally accurate or it's simply perception, I think the perception is growing increasingly negative, which would make it pretty easy for someone else to come in and court that affection quickly and be a major competitor in this market. I think what it would take, if they're going to monopolize both sites, is the ability of the part of an individual or consortium of people to come together to develop this site. And my belief is that we could quickly attract another grocery store to the site based on this data. And as you say, Steve, the data is probably being exacerbated by the dynamic that we're going through right now, and it's probably more significant.
Frank, I've actually had people that work in Food Line that know me come up to me and ask me, what are you doing to get somebody here in town? This is driving me crazy. I can't keep up. We're all behind. And as he's pushing a cart down the aisle to try to load a shelf.
You know,
I mean, the people that are working in the store are eager for another store to be here.
Yeah, well, what I would hope people would begin to understand once the information gets out there, that this is a more challenging economic development problem than the ordinary kinds of economic development activities that we deal with, in that we, meaning the town, the county, or the partnership, don't own this property. We really have no control over it, with the exception of what you do in terms of zoning regulations, etc. We have no control over what the owners do with it. We've been advocating, we've been trying to put out, I think, the message that we believe is in the best interest of this community, and that's to have not just one player in the market, but two, because that's what we believe our citizens want. But we really have no control over those two sites. We can work with the owners of both sites to try to maximize on the opportunities that could exist for the town and the county. But if they're not willing players with us, it does leave us in a position where I think we would have to develop a different scenario where we look to different land that could be developed that could host another grocery store. But I think one of the unfortunate consequences that would flow from that is we have right now, well, actually two shopping centers that are marginally performing in terms of lots of empty storefronts. And when you start playing in this way, where you take out a major activity, I can't see what's left of that center that would be viable other than the drugstore, which has been looking for other sites over the past couple of years.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
We
Well,
appreciate
we'll keep you posted as we find out information, but you may be reading it in the paper before we're communicating it, so.
Okay, thank you, Anne Marie, and thank you, Frank. Again, the topic has been of such interest among the citizens of Edenton that we thought it would be an appropriate time here as we anticipate an announcement of some sort in the near future. Just to let all of you know that A, we've been sensitive to it, and B, the parties that have the opportunity to converse with ownership of the properties involved, and also with efforts made to speak directly with Food Line, which went unanswered, that we have been listening to you and trying to do what we can from our perspective, which Frank just clarified is not much, because this is a private sector free enterprise situation where the property owners and the business people involved with leasing the property are going to make a decision, and it'll be theirs. And as long as they're in compliance with our rules and regulations, that there's really nothing we can do. But we can certainly assist in trying to find competitive interests that want to come in and participate in what appears to be a significant amount of leakage in just one expense item for all of us, and that's the food that we eat. So thanks you again for enlightening us and our viewers and those here tonight. We appreciate it.